Hello everybody, I'm Ian with Board Feelings, and I have a pretty large weakness when it comes to board games. Honestly, I have a few weaknesses, but I'm only going to talk about one right now, and that is designer David Turczi. I don't always love his designs, but his solo modes in a lot of his games are fantastic. So whenever his name appears on a design, I am instantly interested, and that's why when Imperium Classics came out by Osprey Games with Nigel and David Turczi as the designers, I bought it. But first, only a small amount of people that watch my videos are subscribers, so if you like what you see, consider subscribing. It only takes a second and you can always unsubscribe later. Now before we continue, I want to say that this review is only going to be talking about Imperium Classics, although I do own and do plan to play Imperium Legends, which is kind of like a standalone sequel, companion to Classics, which can be interchanged, intermingled, and played together. But for this video, I'm just talking about Classics because as of this point, those are the only factions I've played. Hey everybody, this is a reshoot. I shot my entire review, and by the end of it, I was like, nope, I want to take a different angle. And so this is my different angle. If you care what the previous one was, it was a pretty standard review. This one's going to be a little different, so buckle up. I'm going to start off by saying a single thing. I love this game. I absolutely love this game. It's fantastic. I would not recommend it to very many people, but I'm going to keep it for a long time simply because it's going to take me a long time to go through all the factions and then also go through all of the solo modes that are included in this game. For those who don't know, each version of the game, Classics and Imperium, each have 8 factions for a total of 16. On top of that, Nigel and David Turczi created a solo mode for each one of those factions. So just to finish it all is going to be daunting, and I am so excited for it. But that being said, I'm going to talk about a single point of why this rulebook is one of the worst rulebooks in the business. And that's how I'm going to focus my review, talking about why I love the game despite this awful rulebook. Let's talk about what Imperium is. Imperium essentially is a deck builder with the theme of a civilization game. So why is the rulebook so bad? Well, first of all, they front load the rulebook with a lot of definitions of how to read these cards. Front loading a rulebook typically just is a lot of information that you don't know how to comprehend because you don't even know how to play the game yet. Second, there are a total of 4 pages of setup. There are 2 pages dedicated to how to set up your personal faction, and then there are 2 pages dedicated to how to set up the market and the public section of the game. After that, it goes into how to play the game, which is fantastic. Finally, we know how to play the game. So it has 2 pages dedicated to how to take your actions and how to clean up after your turn. Then has almost a full page dedicated to how to reshuffle your deck, because that is a very important part of the game, and honestly one of the things I like the most. Then there's a full page dedicated to endgame, the different things that can trigger it and how to score based off of those different triggers. And then after that you have pages of keywords and pages of descriptions of all the different factions. So me, after having read how to play the game, I sat down and started to play it. I immediately drew up my 5 cards, looked at them, and immediately had no idea how to play. Why is that? Because of the keywords. One of the keywords that I immediately noticed I had no idea how to play was garrison. Garrison is a keyword you typically see on Legions, which is one of the 4 main suits of the game, and I knew absolutely nothing about how to do that. So into the rulebook I went. I learned how to garrison. But then I ran across 2 other keywords that I knew nothing about, acquire and breakthrough. So into the rulebook I went again. And at this moment, I realized that the keywords are very important to the game. Not just things at the end of the rulebook to look up because they appear occasionally. They are on every single card and are very important. Why they put them after endgame, I will never know. But to be completely honest, that's not even the worst of it. The worst of it is when I set up this deck of cards, which is called the Fame deck, I was able to look through and saw that these get you a lot of end game points and have a lot of really interesting effects. So I knew they were important because it was the main way to end the game was to go through this deck, which is part of the public market. But after having cycled through my deck now twice, I knew I had absolutely no idea how to get a single card from that deck. So here was 3 or 4 rounds scrambling, not knowing what I was doing, just randomly grabbing cards and not knowing any of the effects of anything. And then after the 3rd shuffle of my deck, I gained this card right here, the Glory card, which states abandon, another keyword, back to the rulebook, 3 legions. So abandon or discard 3 legions to look at the top 2 cards of the Fame deck. Take one of those cards. So after about 5 or 6 rounds of playing this game, I finally knew how to go into this Fame deck. But then I encountered another problem. I noticed as I was going through my cards that I had not set up 3 legions in my tableau. Why? Because I kept looking at the legions and they didn't seem beneficial to gain a lot of them. I was focusing on a completely different strategy. So suddenly I had to pivot my strategy, which is fine. But I thought it was odd that I didn't know how to get those cards until 5 or 6 turns into my play, and I couldn't even get one until about 8 to 10 turns into my play. And then I thought to myself, why wasn't that card talked about? So I reread the section of this faction. It's not talked about there. I looked at the whole rulebook. It is not talked about anywhere in this whole rulebook. And I thought that was so odd. How could a card that is so special not be talked about at all? And then I decided to do something. I went through the other 15 factions. I noticed that every single one, except for maybe 1 or 2 of them, but most of them had this exact card, a Glory card with the exact text on it. So then I knew this card wasn't faction specific. This card is vital to the entire game. This card is how you end and win the game. So why isn't it talked about? You would think that something so vital to the entire game would be talked about somewhere in this rulebook. It is not. What would I do if I was fixing this rulebook? First of all, I would put the keywords throughout the how to play section. I probably would leave them at the end of the book as well with how wordy they can be, but in the main section talk about acquires when you gain a card, or breakthrough is when you gain a card a different way, or abandon means to discard, like things like that. That should be in the main rulebook. But second, you should talk about how you get these cards. These cards are vital to the game. Yes, there definitely could be a strategy in not acquiring those cards and going for a different endgame condition, but based on what I can see on the factions I've played and the games I've played, that's the most important way to get endgame points, is from those cards. So that should be mentioned somewhere. It should be its own section. It should be talked about that somewhere in your deck is a Glory card. It might be in your main deck, it might be in your nation deck, it might be in your development deck, it might be somewhere, but you probably have that card. Make sure you know where it is in your deck and how to get it. So then you can start getting those Fame cards. The fact that it doesn't state, I know I'm going on about this one point, but the fact that it doesn't state it is honestly mind-boggling to me. Okay, now, despite the problems with the rulebook and the blatant omission of the main strategy of the game, I love this game. Once I got past that, I play the game. I can play any faction, probably, most likely. Today I encountered one faction, the Vikings, have a card that I didn't think was important at all. I was looking at it and I got my first hand, I looked at it and I was like, this card is useless. There is no reason why I would ever use this card. And then I went on Board Game Geek and I looked at it and someone else had the same question, said the same thing. And the designer, Nigel, thankfully responded and said, no, this card isn't useless. This is how you use it. And this is the part of the rulebook that we were misinterpreting, which is fine. Like, it's fine. I'm glad he answered. But again, the fact that at least 2 people, well, 3 people, because there's another person who commented with the same question. So the fact that 3 people have the exact same question about the wording of a card and the rulebook means that there's some ambiguity and it should have been taken better care of. But despite all that, I love this game. I love how you flow through your deck, acquiring new cards, and then you can flip from Barbarian to Empire. I love how then it allows you to use new cards that you can acquire from the market. I love how you're building this engine, and then you can spend a few rounds just running the engine, which I've seen some people complain about this game being too long, not just in length, but also in turns. I actually like the length of it because by about 3/4 of the way through, your engine is built. And so you're just running through your engine trying to acquire more points, more fame cards and more other cards to get more points. And I like that. I like the idea that you spent 3/4 of the game building something up to then just run through it, like a Civilization does. I love the unrest mechanic, how the game can immediately end if this deck ever runs out. I love the fact that there are 16 different factions that I can play with and experience and get to know and enjoy. And on top of that, I love that there's 16 different versions of the solo mode that I can play against. So yeah, is the rulebook flawed? 100%. I was able to get through it. Honestly, by my second play, I was perfectly fine. It was only the first play that I was really struggling. But I got through it. And now I love this game. And I'm so mad that the rulebook is so bad that it's going to turn people off. When in reality, the game is fantastic. Everybody who likes heavy Euros, who really wants to play the heaviest, most intense deck builder that exists on the market, should play Imperium. And I'm sad that a lot of people are going to be turned off because of the rulebook. So because how odd this review was, I'm not going to give an official feelings of this game. Just know that I do love it. I really enjoy it. It's probably going to be a top 20 game for me after a few more plays. I really, really like this game. But it has some problems specifically in the rulebook. Anyways, I'm in with board feelings, and those have been my thoughts and feelings on specifically the rulebook of Imperium Classics. Have you played it? What did you think? And name another great game with a pretty poor rulebook. Leave your thoughts and feelings in the comments below, and I'll go experience many board feelings. I want to thank you all so much for watching my video. I know there are hundreds, if not thousands, of other board game content creators out there, and you took your time to watch this one, so thank you so much. If you like what you see, consider subscribing. You can do that right here. And if you want to see more of my videos, you can click right up here to see more. And down here is just a video that YouTube thinks you may like. So once again, thanks for watching.